just before we start the show, I want to take an opportunity to invite you to join me for the Podfluence Weekly newsletter, which is available both on LinkedIn and through the official newsletter channel. Now, if you are on LinkedIn and it's easier for you to follow there, then please just click on the link in the show notes, which will take you straight to Podfluence on LinkedIn, where you can subscribe for free and get weekly updates on Podfluence articles as well as episodes. If you would like to subscribe to the full newsletter where you'll get additional materials and, as my little incentive to you, my pre-podcast guest checklist for you to use when you're appearing on podcast shows so that you can be fully prepared every single time, then please click the link to the official newsletter in the show notes. Hope to see you there. Let's get on with the show. Welcome to the show. My name's Johnny Ball. This is Speaking Influence, the show that delves into the world of influence and persuasion to help you develop ethical influence and build your authority, and to be able to become a powerfully persuasive communicator to help you grow your business. Guests on the show have generally included experts from the world of influence and persuasion and the people who are already out there in the world using these skills and tools and doing it. Today's guest is no exception to that, and we are returning to some of the roots of this show, really, which is based on a desire to understand how important public speaking and presentation skills work in terms of influence and persuasion. Undoubtedly, they are critical, and we've been aware that they have been since the time of Aristotle, who first wrote and studied this in his writings about rhetoric. And so we take a look today into the world of professional speaking from somebody who is helping people all around the world to become professional speakers, get paid for their speaking, and to improve their speaking skills. His name is Grant Baldwin. I've been a fan of Grant's for a long time, as someone who listens to the Speaker Lab podcast, of which Grant is one of the hosts. And also he is the author of a great book called The Successful Speaker, which I have very much enjoyed. And we do get on to talking about some of the content of that book in today's episode. I was lucky enough to be at an event with Grant not that long ago, where I approached Grant and asked if he would be willing to become a guest on Speaking Influence. He agreed straight away. Not only did he do that, he also helped me with an issue that I was having, and is such a nice guy. So I know that he's a great person to help all of us. I think you'll enjoy the show as much as I did. He's certainly someone who we all have a lot to learn from. I hope you will enjoy the show.
Welcome to Speaking Influence, the show that helps you to master the psychology and application of ethical influence and persuasion in life and business, with persuasive presentations and podcasting coach, Johnny Ball.
If you're a coach, speaker, or course creator and would like to have a simple online ecosystem for your business where you can create funnels, build an integrated website, sell and host courses and live programs, build your list with lead magnets, manage your sales, create communities, and so much more in a way that is affordable and fully supported, you'll love New Zenler. You can try everything out for free, and if you love it, you can register for monthly or discounted annual billing. It's more cost-effective than most other similar platforms. Don't pay for a multitude of services you have to then link up manually. Get an online solution that does everything you need in one place. Find the link in the show notes and try New Zenler as the all-in-one solution for your business today.
Welcome to another episode of Speaking Influence. And this time I am actually really excited to be joined by somebody who I have listened to on his podcast for quite a while now, and also have really enjoyed learning from him as well over time. And we were very fortunate enough to connect at the end of last year, and I was so excited when he's agreed to come and be a guest on the show. He is the host of the Speaker Lab podcast, and also the writer, the author of the book, The Successful Speaker. So let me officially welcome Grant Baldwin to the show. Grant, great to have you here.
Johnny, thanks for letting me hang out with you, man.
I've been really looking forward to speaking to you, and I just know that I personally have learned so much from you in the time that I've been listening to Speaker Lab, and certainly when I got hold of The Successful Speaker, that I listened to it probably about 3 times
Awesome.
in succession, because there was so much value in there, and there were so many
Cool.
things that I just really wanted to get, that it was a very valuable resource, and one that I will continue to refer to. So I'm very much looking forward to what we're going to talk about today.
Awesome.
The theme of this show is influence and persuasion. I wonder who for you has been someone who you look up to, who you admire for their influence and persuasion, and for what they've done with it, and why.
Yeah, there's a couple people that come to mind. One is a coach that I've worked with for a few years. His name is Aaron Walker. I live in the Nashville area here in Tennessee, and he's probably 20, 25 years older than me. He's a successful entrepreneur. He's also just an amazing husband, an amazing father. So he's had a huge impact on me and just his own influence in me and his life and my own life. I know that there's several guys and friends of mine that we all look up to. We admire Aaron. Like, that's the kind of guy that we want to be like whenever we grow up, not because of anything that tactical that he's done in terms of influence or persuasion, but by in terms of like how he lives his life. And so he is definitely a great example of that. Someone like a Michael Hyatt is another example of someone who just checks a lot of boxes of not just like what they've done in business or in terms of like their influence or persuasion, just in terms of entrepreneurship, but just who they are as a human being, who they are as a dad, as a husband, as just a human like that. That certainly had a big influence and impact in my world.
Fantastic. That's some great answers there as well. Now, I've been a listener to Speaker Lab for some time, and one of the main reasons why I ever started listening to you, why I knew who you were, long before I ever encountered you in Chris Ducker's world, which is where we actually got to connect. And
Yep.
that one of the reasons why is because I've been very interested in public speaking, and as far as this show goes, public speaking is an integral part of influence and persuasion. It's so vital because if you want to be someone who is a leader, someone who has great influence, you have to be able to present and
Right.
speak well in public. But I wonder for you, what first got you interested or thinking about public speaking?
Yeah, I know that for a lot of people, public speaking is one of the people's greatest fears. I know it is certainly for my wife. Anytime I've been speaking, she's like, "Don't you dare bring me up on stage. I don't want to talk in front of anybody, anything like that." But for whatever reason, even when I was young, speaking was one of those things that I looked forward to. Like in speech class, I was like, I look forward to giving a speech. Right? I was still nervous, and you still have the butterflies, right? And that's normal and natural. But I was just excited about the opportunity. I remember even into college, the same sort of thing. And so I was pretty involved in my local church, and I had a few opportunities to speak here and there, maybe teach a Sunday school class. And for whatever reason, it was just something that I gravitated toward and something that I felt like this is something that is appealing and interesting to me. In college, I actually worked for a guy who was a full-time speaker. And so I kind of got to see a little bit behind the scenes of how does the business work? How does he book gigs and travel and working with clients? And what does he speak about? And like, how does that world work? And so I don't know. I'd kind of been around it a little bit growing up, but also recognized like this is something I enjoy doing and I wanted to do more of it. Met a couple guys who are full-time speakers, started stalking them and harassing them like, hey, how do I do what you do? And eventually learned a couple things and became a full-time speaker and was doing over the course of a couple of years, was doing 60, 70 gigs a year. And it was awesome. So speaking is just one of those things that I'm really, really passionate about. I really, really enjoy. There's a lot of different forms of media, whether that's a book or a podcast or a blog or whatever it may be, or social media, but there's nothing that compares, especially like an in-person event. And I know that times are weird with the pandemic, but being together with other human beings in a shared space, sharing an experience and a moment via a speaker is really, really powerful. So yeah, I'm a huge, huge fan of all things speaking.
One of the reasons why I particularly enjoy a lot of your content and what you do is because one of the things that you are very focused on is helping people to move into the world of becoming paid public speakers, paid professional speakers.
Right.
I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how you got started, like the first time you got paid for speaking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like I said, I had a few free opportunities here and there, but the first like legit paid gig that I did where they hired Grant to come speak. I remember I was living in Missouri here in the States at the time. I got hired to speak at it was this 4-H event, which 4-H is like a youth conference or a youth organization for students that are interested in agriculture and farming. I didn't come from a farming land. I didn't know anything about that, but I knew it was an opportunity to speak and talk about leadership. And so went to the event and I spent so much time practicing and preparing and rehearsing. I remember, the night before in the hotel room, just going over my talk time and time and time again. And in the morning, going over the talk time and time again. And so get up, deliver the presentation, and spoke for about 30, 45 minutes in front of a group, about 300 students or so, high school students mostly. And I finished up and they gave me a standing ovation. And I was just like, man, that went really, really well. And it's just kind of like the bug bit you and just like, I got to do more of this. What do I do from here? How do I book more of these? How do I find more of these opportunities? And this part of it was certainly like the impact that I was able to make as a speaker, but also afterwards the event planner came up and was like, hey, you did an amazing job, hands me my check. The check was for $1,000, which was just like $1 billion in my mind of like, I can't believe they just paid me $1,000 to stand in front of this audience and speak. And it was just like a really, really powerful moment of this was really rewarding, this was really fulfilling. It just checked so many boxes of what I wanted to do and also be able to make a good living at it. And so yeah, that's really where I guess some of the initial momentum and initial excitement of being a speaker came from.
And other things that you talk about professionally now the same or similar to the things you talked about when you first got started, or has there been an evolution there?
Yeah, there's certainly been an evolution, and I think that there are certainly some speakers who they find what that one thing is that they want to speak about, and they speak about that for, the good majority of their career. I think that can also be a bit of a limiting belief. And this is where some, especially early on in a speaker's career, they can get a little bit hung up of feeling like, okay, I need to get clear on who I speak to, what problem that I solve. But we feel like we're making like a permanent decision. Like, okay, if I speak about this, then that's the only thing I can ever speak about forever and ever and ever. And no, that's not necessarily the case. Like, there's a variety of speakers who will may speak on this for a period of time, for maybe a couple of years, and then maybe it kind of evolves into kind of a tangential type of topic, and maybe they go a bit of a different direction, and that's relatively normal. So whenever you're figuring out what it is that you might speak on, don't feel like, again, you're making this permanent decision that you can never, never, ever, ever change. We're picking a starting point just to start to build some momentum, and then again, if you need to pivot or adjust down the road, that's totally fine. And that tends to be the case with a lot of speakers, and that was certainly the case in my own journey.
Yeah. Would now be a good time for people to be thinking about this? Like, what if I'd like to become a paid speaker, but I'm also aware that we've had a pandemic, and I've heard from other speakers that speaking opportunities dried up and it's all
Sure.
changed in the speaking world. Is it still a good career for people to move into? And is this still a good time to do that?
Yeah, I know this sounds weird, but it is absolutely, I think, the best possible time for speakers right now. And here's what I mean by that is pre-pandemic, really the only opportunities that existed were live in-person events, right? And then the pandemic hits and for certainly a few weeks, a few months there, the whole world is going like, holy cow, well, like what is going on? And I know for me personally, I felt like, man, I'm watching all these speakers schedules just getting decimated, and like this is affecting the world, but certainly the speaking industry.
Yeah.
But what happened then that we began to see is that then you see all these virtual opportunities that began to pop up. And so prior to the pandemic, virtual just wasn't really a thing. Like it was something that a few speakers would do, a few event planners would do, but it just wasn't something that people really took seriously. And then what happened is the pandemic hits and it becomes the only option. Virtual's the only game in town, right? And so virtual takes off. And now all of a sudden you have a lot of people who see the viability of it and realize like, hey, there's for event planners and for speakers, there's real opportunities for virtual. But what we've seen now, as we are coming up on around 2 years post the real start of the pandemic, is that now that live events continue to come back more and more, it doesn't mean that they are replacing virtual events. It means that now that there are both opportunities that exist. And so there's a lot of events that didn't previously have a live event that will do virtual. There's a lot of live events that are coming back and doing live events. There's a lot more opportunities to do hybrid events where maybe you're speaking live, but there's also a virtual component to it. There's also opportunities for speakers to combine them, meaning that, hey, let me come speak and do kind of a kickoff keynote, and then let me do a Zoom virtual presentation for 3 months follow up. That's going to be for a bigger fee than had I just done the live in person to begin with. So again, if anything, I think there are way more opportunities than have ever been available because of the pandemic. And so again, it's kind of one of the silver linings that has come out of all of this is there are major opportunities for speakers who want to speak virtually, major opportunities for speakers who want to speak live, and major opportunities for speakers who want to do a combination of both.
Yeah. I love that what you do in your Speaker Lab work is helping people find those opportunities and create them for themselves as well. So, who really is a professional speaking career for? Is there a particular kind of person that would be thinking about this, or really could anybody go into professional speaking?
Yeah, one of the neat things about professional speaking is it's not necessarily a one size fits all. So, for example, when I was speaking full time, I was doing around 60 or 70 paid gigs a year. There's a lot of travel. I was gone 80, 90 nights a year. And some people who may be watching or listening may think, that sounds awesome. I would absolutely love to do that. And other people are like, it sounds miserable. No chance that I'm interested in that. And so, again, it's not that you have to do this certain number. I know speakers who do a lot more than that and speakers that do a lot less than that. So what's great is though you get to decide how speaking fits into your world, right? So maybe personally you just say, hey, I'm at a stage in life where I can't really travel or I don't want to go that far. So, I only want to do live in-person gigs where I don't I'm not gone from the house more than one night, or I'm not gone from the house at all, or maybe I only want to do virtual gigs. You can choose to do that. Or other speakers who say, I want to do only virtual gigs or I only want to do in-person gigs. Like it's kind of a buffet that you get to choose what makes sense for you. So there's not any rhyme or reason that you have to do it this way or you have to do it that way. Like I can point to 10 different speakers and they're all doing it in a way that makes sense for them. So it all works. You just got to determine what makes sense for you. So don't feel like, hey, in order to be a speaker, in order to get started, I got to be committed to doing a ton of events a year. You don't. Like, you figure out kind of what makes sense for you, how you want to go about doing that. And if you're looking for help and support, then we can absolutely help you get there.
Yeah. And it's an important thing for you to recognize as well that there are lots of opportunities out there and in all sorts of different ways. So some people who may have more of a scientific background and style of speaking, there will be opportunities for you as well as people who
Right.
maybe are more motivational and things like that. So yeah, I think that's a great way to frame it up. So, in the ways that you help people, how does somebody know if they are good enough to be a professional speaker? Like, what are the things that make somebody, at least in your opinion, a good professional speaker?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to remember that every speaker starts from zero, meaning that the first time anybody speaks, nobody knows what they're doing, right? And so it's okay. Don't feel like that you have to be this, Tony Robbins or Brene Brown or whoever, like out of the gate. Like, that's not realistic, and that's
Yeah,
that's putting unfair and unrealistic expectations on yourself. So realize at the beginning, you're probably going to suck. Like, I look back on some of my early talks and presentations, like I didn't know what I was doing, and you're just trying and you're just figuring it out. And so it's kind of like learning to do anything. If you wanted a podcast, the first couple of podcast episodes are probably not as good as the podcast that you're doing now.
oh,
If
for
you
sure.
wanted to write, your first couple of blog posts are not going to be as good as blog posts years later. So you got to at least take a little bit of pressure off yourself of feeling like I have to be amazing out of the gate. Like, you're probably not going to be, but you're certainly not going to improve and get better if you try it once and then just give up, right? And again, that's the same with anything, whether you want to be a writer or a singer or drawer or a chef or whatever. You have to continue to put in the reps to get better at that. And the other thing I would say is that speaking is kind of one of these unique things where I'll give an example. Like, I enjoy playing golf. And so I don't need anybody else in order for me to go play golf or to practice getting better at golf. Now, still got to put the reps in, but it's not dependent on anybody else. I got to get up and do the work. Right. And so whenever it comes to speaking, though, it's a bit different because you're dependent on an audience, right? And
Yeah,
so you're looking for opportunities where you can get some at bats and you can get some practice. And so even doing something like this, you and I just having a conversation here for a podcast, for a recording, it gives practice to, okay, maybe this is some content that I would share in a speech or a presentation. And so maybe there's a story that I've been practicing or working on that maybe I want to throw in here in a podcast and see how it works. Maybe I want to do a Facebook Live or a YouTube video that just gives me some reps, that gives me some practice, that just helps me to get comfortable and confident with my material, with my content, to be able to present that. And so it's a big thing I would say is just give yourself a little bit of grace and a little bit of patience early on to interpret whenever you're putting together your presentation or your talk. It's not going to be amazing right out of the gate. I'd
yeah,
also say, like, that's one of the things that we help speakers with inside the Speaker Lab is we have a training program where we focus on stagecraft, meaning, like, let's say you've got a rough idea of your talk and you're trying to figure out, is this good? So we want to work with you not only on the talk itself and make sure that it's polished and ready, but also make sure in terms of how you deliver it. If you have an amazing talk that you drop the ball in terms of your presentation, it doesn't do anything. And if you're amazing on stage but you don't have anything to talk about, again, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And so we want to make sure that we help put both of those things together so that you have an amazing presentation and you deliver it in a masterful way, because your best marketing tool is a great talk. And so we want to make sure that whenever you step up on stage to deliver, that you're prepared and you can do a great job.
yeah. Now, I know from my podcasting experience and probably from my public speaking experience as well so far that a lot of what people see is not all the work that goes into this. So there's a lot more that happens. So I wonder, from the perspective of being a professional speaker, as a percentage of how much of the actual work is, how much is a percentage of the actual stage time of being a professional speaker, and how much of it is around the admin, the bookings, the planning, and other things as well?
Yeah, Johnny, that's a really great question, because one thing I think that is, again, kind of a misconception is people assume, like, okay, I want to be a speaker, therefore the majority of my time I just want to spend on stage. And, like, that's kind of the icing on the cake. That's the thing that we want to do. But in order to be able to do that, you have to recognize that you're not just a speaker, but you're running a business, and speaking happens to be the thing that you're delivering. And so a way to think about this is there's a good book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth, and he talks about the example or the analogy of running a bakery. And so he said there's two sides of the bakery. There's the baked goods, being the actual baker, like I making the bread or cupcakes or cakes or whatever it is that you're going to bake. You have to be really, really good at that. But then there's the business of actually running the bakery, right? Of making sure that you're keeping your costs of cost of goods down, that you're marketing it well, that you're bringing traffic into the door, that your labor costs stay under control, right? So there's being a baker and there's running a bakery, and there's two different things. And the same thing is true for being a speaker. There's being a speaker, being on stage and delivering a message, which is kind of the fun, glamorous, sexy, shiny part that people want to do. And then there's running a speaking business. And ultimately, you have to be able to wear both hats or
Yeah.
be able to find someone who can help you on the speaking business. Because a lot of times speakers are like, well, I don't want to sell myself. I don't want to market myself. I just want to get up there on stage and speak. I was like, I'm sure you do, but like you got to do the work from running a speaking business, from doing the sales, doing the marketing. That's the core thing that we teach and we show people how to do. It's exactly what steps to take. You mentioned the book, The Successful Speaker. This is where we talk about exactly what you should do, exactly what you should say, how you reach out, how you follow up. Like this is the business of being a speaker, but you have to be able to do both, right? Because the reality is the majority of your time is going to be spent on the business side of it. And so, for example, I remember early on in my own speaking business, I had a buddy said, you have to fall in love with the process. The result is what we're going for, the result of standing on a stage, but you have to fall in love with the process of doing the work that gives you the opportunity to stand on stage. But if you're not
Yeah.
willing to do the work and you're just looking for shortcuts, that's never going to work. So you have to be willing to do the work to earn the opportunity to stand on stage.
Yeah. It's interesting in life, I've encountered some people along the way who don't feel that they ever need to prepare for presentations and public speaking things. And they say that they do perfectly fine with that. And to some extent, I can believe that they probably do. But I also feel that they may be robbing themselves of the opportunity to go to an even higher level. And if they can do all of this really well without practice and all the background stuff, that go all the other work that goes into this, how much better could they be with that? Would you agree with that, or do you think that there are just some people who actually do it better on the fly?
Yeah, I 1000% agree with you. And so it's kind of like, if you think about like a symphony playing versus a jazz band playing, right? So a symphony has their sheet music. We know exactly what note we are playing at each time, and everyone has to play their part, and it's very, very precise. And jazz is more just kind of like free flowing and riffing, right? And I think a good speaker is a bit of a combination of both, right? So the idea of, like you're saying, Johnny, that, someone just scribbles down a couple thoughts on a napkin and I'm going to just hop up on stage and wing it. I do not endorse that whatsoever. And I think that that's lazy. And I think that that if you want to be a professional, top notch speaker, the best speakers on the planet, they don't just like hop up on stage and like, I'm just going to make this up and hopefully it all works out.
Yeah.
They do not do that. They spend hours and hours and hours behind the scenes, practicing, rehearsing, going over things, thinking about word choices, thinking about the sentence is 10 words long. How do I get it down to 7 words long? And does this make sense? Maybe I should move this story here instead of here, or maybe I should cut this. And like really there's a lot of meticulous thought and detail that goes into it. Now you see that speaker, or you see, for another good example is comedians, you see a comedian up on stage and you think, oh, they're just funny, they're just telling some jokes. But no, like every word is carefully considered and it looks like they're just doing it off the top of their head. They make it look effortless, but it's because they've spent so much time behind the scenes practicing and rehearsing and crafting. And so again, if you just want to like, just I'm speaking a few things here and there and you're not taking it totally seriously, that's fine. And if you want to treat it like an amateur, that's fine. Like, but don't expect professional results. Don't expect to be paid and paid well and paid consistently if you're just going to go through the motions, because an audience can tell, event planners can tell if you are a prepared, polished, professional speaker, or if you're someone who's just like, it's just kind of like fun to make it up. Again, there's still like I said, like an element of jazz of maybe, you kind of throw something out there that works. Here's like a random story I thought of, or here's a little anecdote, or here's a little punchline that I thought I'd try. And it worked really, really, really well. Like, awesome. I want to make a note of that to keep doing that in the future. So you may have a point or two where you're kind of like, I'm going to riff for about 30 seconds or something. Or here's a funny thing that happened this morning, that I wouldn't normally share. Or here I'm kind of in the moment and maybe something happened in the room that I want to share. There's some current event that you want to talk about. That's all fine, but don't come with the idea of, I'm just gonna, string together a couple thoughts and hope it all just magically comes together into a good, polished, cohesive presentation, because that just
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that sort of speaks to the idea of the thinking about public speaking as just speaking, as just getting up onto a platform, live, virtual, whatever, and just speaking, rather than the whole craft of it, as you really talk about, all the stuff that goes into it, all the planning, all the stories that get well crafted and chosen for particular reasons and worked on, and movement that goes into it and why that's there, and
Yeah.
how you can stopping it and use the right metaphors to use, and where to maybe inject some humor, and having enough flexibility around that to be able to know what to do. And again, some of that comes with experience. But yeah, I really like that. And we agree on that. We definitely agree on that. I think it's very valuable to do that kind of work. What are your opinions on why public speaking and professional speaking is so important in terms of leadership and authority, personal authority?
Yeah, if you look at just the studies and surveys about what are some of the more respected professions, a public speaker is up there really, really, really high. Even like up with if I remember correctly, it was like in the top couple with like brain surgeon, right? So if you hear someone's a brain surgeon, it's like, whoa, wow, okay, like this is someone who has a very prestigious and admirable profession, and it's very similar whenever it comes to speaking. Someone who is well polished, who is eloquent, who chooses their words carefully, who has that knows how to present well, like they command a certain level of respect and influence and authority. And so whether or not you want to be a professional speaker, if you want to stand on stage and do that, that's awesome. But if you're just like, I don't want to do that, but I have to give presentations for my work or for my company, or even in conversations or in small groups where I might meet people or teach a Sunday school class or whatever it may be, even on a small scale, being able to eloquently present your thoughts or your ideas and putting together in a cohesive, flowing manner makes a big, big difference. And so, yeah, whether or not you want to be a professional public speaker, don't just cast aside of like, I don't want to be a professional speaker, therefore I don't need to know how to present. No, you still want to know how to, again, be able to articulate an idea or thought and be able to present an idea. So yeah, there's absolutely a lot of I think recognition and again kind of prestige that comes with and kind of cachet that comes with being a speaker.
Are there any particular topics or themes in speaking that are just a very easy sell as a public speaker? Like, yeah, people are always going to be looking for these kinds of topics. And conversely, some that people should just really stay well away from.
Yeah, so I would say there's kind of a balance there because there's a balance between what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what your experience is, what you want to speak about, and what it is that organizations and groups actually hire speakers to talk about. And there's going to be some type of overlap there, but there's also going to be it kind of depends what your goals and ambitions are with speaking. Meaning, like let's say you were really really passionate. I'll give you an example, like dog training, for example. Okay, and you said, okay, I love dogs, I love animals, and I'm a great dog trainer, and I want to do a ton of presentations and I want to charge $20,000 a talk and I want to do 50 presentations a year. And like, are there opportunities to speak about dog training? Yes, I would say so. Are there hundreds of opportunities? I doubt it. But at the
Mhm.
same time, I'd also say I've been in the speaking industry a long time and I'm still surprised by some of the opportunities that exist. And so I'll give an example. Take this dog training example. We had a client we worked with a few years ago who is a veterinarian. She's a full-time veterinarian, worked with animals, and she's following our system, following the process that we teach. And so she reached out and she said, "Hey, I just booked my first gig, first paid gig." I was like, "That's awesome. Tell me about it." And she said she lived in Connecticut and they were flying her to Las Vegas to do this presentation. They were paying her $5,000 to speak at a pet sitting conference. A pet sitting conference. So like people who want to be pet sitters who keep an eye on pets while family members or friends are away. They
Uh-huh.
paid her $5,000 to speak at a pet sitting conference. So if she came to me before and said, "Hey, I want to speak at pet sitting conferences. Is that a thing?" I'd be like, I don't think so. But I'm also not in the pet industry, so I don't know. And so here's an opportunity for her to go speak at something that, again, I don't claim like I know every possible event or opportunity. So again, you have to find what that overlap is between what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what it is that organizations and groups are actually hiring speakers to talk about.
Which is the best one to start with? Your passions or what is actually being looked for and working out what you could do or what you're most passionate about from that?
I think you start with what you know, what your experience is, because the other thing is sometimes there's going to be an intersection there of what you're passionate about, what you know, what you're knowledgeable on, with the opportunities that exist. And I'll give an example of this. So I remember several years ago, when I was speaking in the education space, I did a lot with high schools and colleges. And so a topic I was interested in, a topic I was passionate about was personal finance. I knew for my wife and I how much like really paying attention to our finances and having a budget and living on less than we made and saving, just doing some of these basic things, like doing these things made a big difference for us. So it's kind of like, man, if I could speak to teenagers on this and they understood this at a young age, like how much more of an impact it can make for their own financial well-being for years to come. And so I was going from like school to school to school, clients that I'd worked with before and said, "Hey, let me come teach your students about personal finance." And I found like over and over that they like principals and administrators would say, yeah, we like this is an important topic, but they typically didn't hire speakers to talk about that. And so I had to figure out, okay, what's this overlap between what I'm interested in, personal finance, and speaking to students versus what it is that they're actually looking for. And so in this case, one of the things that they hired speakers a lot to talk about was helping students make a transition from high school into college, university, and the real world and beyond, right? And so I said, hey, I can speak on that. And one of the things that I can talk about within that is helping students with their personal finances, right? Let me help your students make a transition. And one of the things, not the whole thing, but one of the things we're going to talk about it is personal finance. So is able to present something that I'm interested in presenting, but put it in kind of wrapping paper that they're looking for. Now, this isn't like a bait and switch of saying like, oh, you want me to talk about this, but I'm going to show up and talk about something totally different. No, 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 not at all. But saying, what is it that you're looking for help with? What are the problems, the challenges, the needs, the opportunities that you have that I could potentially speak on? What's my skill set? What's my experience? What's in my world that I can blend the two and find something that I know that I can present confidently on that's a win for your audience, but at the same time checks the box of what it is that you're looking for.
We'll return to the show in just a few moments. Like me, you have a message to share with your audience, and it's important. In fact, it could change their lives. But first, you need to be very clear about two things. Exactly who are you trying to help, and what can you offer them that no one else can? Because it all starts there, and it's all about your brand. Brandface sponsors this podcast, and they help people just like you to define, develop, and display a brand that positions you as an authority. It's time to make sure you stand out. Find out more at learnaboutbrandface.com. That's learnaboutbrandface.com. Now, back to speaking influence.
Yeah. Is it a good idea then to start out with an idea of the kind of audiences and stages you want to be speaking to?
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the dangers that a lot of speakers make, or one of the mistakes a lot of speakers make, is whenever it comes to speaking, is we just enjoy speaking. Speaking's fun. Johnny, you and I enjoy the idea of speaking. We enjoy speaking. We enjoy being in front of a crowd, and so we would speak to anybody and everybody who will listen, right? And
Yeah.
even people who don't want to listen, we're like, I'm in for, right? We're just looking for opportunities. We like it, right? And so what that means is we end up really broadening the scope of who do I speak to humans, speak to people. My message is for everybody. And what do I talk about? I don't know. What do you want me to talk about? I can talk about, leadership or motivation or speaking or talk about customer service or talk about marriage or parenting or basketball or golf or whatever. And like we start to just do all these different topics on all these different things for all these different people. What you want to be is you want to be a specialist, not a generalist. And so think through like, again, think about like more of like a sniper rifle versus a shotgun. Like you want to target one specific audience, solve one specific problem. So a way we like to talk about this and think about this is you want to be the steakhouse and not the buffet. The steakhouse and not the buffet. What we mean by that is, Johnny, if you and I were looking for a good steak, like we have a choice, we could go to a buffet where steak is one of 100 different things that they offer and they're all mediocre. Or we could go to a steakhouse where they do one thing, but they do that one thing really, really, really well. Right. So they don't do lasagna, they don't do tacos, they don't do pasta, they do steak, and they're really, really good at that. And so again, it's counterintuitive because you think, well, if you're a buffet, then you appeal to more people. You do, perhaps, but all those things that you're trying to serve are mediocre versus saying, I do this one thing and I do this one thing really, really, really well. Also, look at it just from a financial standpoint, from a fee standpoint. If you're looking for steak, it's probably going to cost more at a steakhouse, in addition to being a better product, than it's going to cost at a buffet. And that means as a speaker, the more specific, the more narrow, the more targeted you are in who you speak to and the problem that you solve for that audience, the higher your fees are going to be versus I'm kind of this generalist that speaks on a bunch of different things to a bunch of different people. So focus more narrow than broad.
Yeah. So it's good advice. And I know that if people are thinking about looking to get paid as speakers, they're not already on that track, that the book is definitely going to help them out. And tuning into your podcast as well, because you regularly speak to professional speakers about the industry and their journeys. And
Right.
there's a lot of valuable things to learn from that. Just could you maybe nutshell or give a few points as to what are some of the things that people should be looking at doing action wise if they are looking to get paid for some speaking work and they're not already doing that?
Yeah, so like the core thing of what we teach, and even inside the book that walks it through, is what we call the Speak framework, right? The Speaker Success Roadmap, and so it makes the acronym Speak, SPEAK. And so I'll just kind of quickly go through it, and we can dig in wherever you want. And I know you mentioned you've listened to the book and read the book and listened to the podcast, and you're probably familiar with this. The S is for select a problem to solve, and we've kind of touched on this, but you just have to be clear on who do you speak to, what's the problem that you solve for that audience. The next part, the P, is to prepare your talk. Be really, really clear on what's the solution that you are providing to that audience. The next part is the E, to establish yourself as the expert. There's two key tools that you need here. You need a website and you need a demo video. So without a website, without a demo video, it's just hard for people to have a lot of confidence or trust in you to take you seriously, to want to book you. You got to remember that event planners are in the risk mitigation business, right? So whenever they hire you to put you up on stage, hand you a microphone to talk to their audience, they're taking a huge risk. I think this person's going to do a good job. I don't think they're going to embarrass me. I don't think they're going to say anything inappropriate. I think hopefully they're going to make me look good to my boss. Like it's a big risk. And so they need to see a website, a demo video, kind of a sample there that gives them some confidence and comfort in hiring you. The next part of the process, A, is to acquire paid speaking gigs. Now, this is the part that oftentimes people want to fast forward to. Like, man, just tell me how to book gigs, right? But
Sure.
you got to be clear on the S. Who do you speak to? What's the problem that you solve? You got to be clear on the P. How do you providing a solution to that? You got to be clear on the E, having that website, having that demo video. And then the beginning to reach out. And again, this system process that we teach on being proactive to reach out to potential event planners, on building relationships, on building a pipeline and following up and having like basic systems and processes in place. And then the last part of the process is K, know when to scale, meaning that a lot of people who are listening right now are interested in speaking, but also interested in perhaps coaching or consulting or doing a podcast or doing a course or doing any number of things. And so we always tell speakers, like, you can do all the things, but you can't do them all at once, meaning
Yeah.
something's going to come first, something's going to come last. And when we talked about earlier that some speakers speak 100 times a year and some speak 5 times a year, you got to decide how speaking fits into your world. I'll give you an example. There are some speakers who like, I know one speaker who does like 50, 60 keynotes a year. He's like, I don't want to do any workshops. I don't want to do any books. I don't want to do any breakouts. I don't want to do anything else. All I want to do is this one specific type of presentation. And some speakers, they're like, all I want to do is consulting. But if I got to do, 5 or 10 gigs to help kind of get my name out there and to build some relationships and to kind of demonstrate my expertise, like, okay, I'll do that. But the core thing that I want to do is actually do consulting, or coaching
Mm.
or do a book. And so you, again, there's no right or wrong methodology or reason for why you do this versus that, but recognizing like you can't do it all. And so be really, really clear on what are the things that make the most sense for you. So
Yeah.
again, kind of again, as a high level overview, but that speak framework, the SPEAK, like that's the core of what we teach in terms of how do you follow a systematic plan to consistently get booked and paid to speak.
Great. No, I appreciate you sharing that with us. And I definitely think for people who are tuning in that they should definitely go and check out the book, and because that's all laid out for them. And I think you go into enough detail in there to give people the tools to start moving forward. What I do want to get to with the time that we have is talking about podcasts, because you have a podcast that I've been listening to for a while and I've been podcasting for a few years. Do you think that podcasting is also a great platform for speakers for getting the message out, or do you have thoughts about it becoming maybe too crowded as a space, or not having as much opportunity as perhaps a few years back?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when people think about whatever trend there is that exists or medium or platform that exists, whether it's YouTube or whether it is speaking, speaking is one of those things that's been around for longer than you or I have been alive and will be around long after us. So, and podcasting has been around for years and years and years. I've been podcasting for, I think, 8 years at this point, and there's still like a lot of people that who may not be familiar with the podcast, who may not actively listen to podcasts. And so sometimes, you and I are this close to it because we host podcasts, we listen to podcasts, but there are still ample opportunities to host a podcast. And I have another friend who, and in fact, I mentioned him earlier, Aaron Walker, who's here in Nashville. He does not host his own podcast, but he has really built a successful business around masterminds by being a guest on other people's podcasts. So podcasting can also be a great way for lead generation, because you think about, we've been talking at this point for about 35 minutes. And I don't know about you, but if someone sent me a blog post that was 35 minutes, there's no chance I'm going to read that.
No.
But I might listen to a podcast, and just by hearing our voices, hearing you and I interacting, you start to kind of develop an affinity and rapport with the host or the guest, and like, oh, okay, I want to learn more about them, or I want to look into what they do, or I resonate with that person. And so there's certainly like just hearing people's voices or seeing us on camera, like you build trust, you build connection with people via podcast that may be harder to do via a book or via a blog or via some form of other medium. So yeah, podcasting is not only a very powerful tool for speakers, it's still a very effective tool that is certainly readily available and accessible today.
Yeah. I love teaching about podcasts, and it's one of the main things that I talk about as well. And particularly in relation to influence and persuasion, because I do think there is a really big opportunity for people to, as you say, promote themselves on other people's podcasts. What do you think are the opportunities for people starting podcasts? Is that a good thing for people to do in as part of their speaking career?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think you have to be really, really clear about why you're going to do a podcast and what's the problem that you're going to solve, who's your audience. Like, be clear on a couple of those simple things. I'd also be really clear about how what your goals are with podcasting if you're anticipating or hoping that it leads to speaking engagements. Okay, so let me give you an example. Um, I used to, well, I host a podcast now called the Speaker Lab podcast. And like you mentioned, we've got at this point close to 400 episodes. We do a weekly episode just talking about anything and everything related to speaking and the speaking industry. Right. And so I don't necessarily get a ton of speaking inquiries out of that because the podcast is not for event planners, it's for speakers. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas I have a friend of mine who he used to host a podcast about mobile marketing and using text messaging and marketing on phones. And this was several years ago when mobile marketing was still starting to like catch fire and become like a bigger thing. And he would get invited regularly because to speak because he would have people who were the head of mobile marketing at some company or organization who were listening, learning to him or learning from his guests and say, hey, can you come teach my team, or can you speak at our event, or can you do some coaching or consulting with us? And so you want to remember that when you're putting together a podcast, like, what are the goals of the podcast? And are the people that would be listening to that podcast, is that going to lead to the goals that you have? And so you just have to be aware, like, podcasting is great, but you just got to be clear on like why you're doing it and what it is that you're hoping to that it produces for you, versus just like, I think it'd be fun to do a podcast. Like, if you just want to do a podcast to do a podcast, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're like, this is going to help me grow my business, okay, but how? Like, what are you hoping happens that leads to it growing your business? The other thing that I would say is some people think, well, I want to make money or monetize my expertise, and so I'm going to host a podcast. And I don't know what your thoughts are, Johnny, but podcasting is not a great way to make money.
No,
And
not
like
yet, not at the
I've
moment.
no, not at all. And like, unless you're in the top 1%, where you have massive, massive reach and downloads, in which case they're making a lot from ads. Like, we don't run any ads on our podcast. The way that we use the podcast personally is, one, selfishly, it's a great way to connect with people. And there are people that I'll reach out to that probably wouldn't give me the time of day normally, because they're not because they're bad people. They're just busy and have a lot going on, but are interested in doing a podcast interview. So it helps me to connect with people. But two, it just helps us to, again, build connection, rapport with an audience who may, like you said, Johnny, you've listened to a bunch of episodes. So you like, well, I
Yeah.
have a pretty good idea who Grant is and whether I can trust this guy or like this guy or feel like this guy knows what he's talking about. And so then people, when we offer our programs or training programs or a book or whatever it is, people are a lot more comfortable and confident going like, okay, I'm going to, invest in this thing or that thing, because again, I built that connection with Grant through the podcast, hearing his voice, listening to him talk about the speaking industry. So for us, we don't make a dime directly from the podcast, but indirectly, it can certainly generate a lot of revenue.
Yeah, I'm definitely a big believer in podcasts being a great tool for building relationships, not
Yep.
just with guests, but with potential audience as well. And being able to hopefully have that as a lead, if you're targeting the right kind of audience with your show, as have that as a lead into other things as well, potentially for you. I think I'm one of very few, I know that very few podcasters make money from their show. And I do now have a sponsor and make some money from podcasting, but it's taken a long time to get there.
Right.
If anyone's looking to make money quickly, I definitely wouldn't say start a podcast.
Right.
Unless you
Exactly.
have a very clear plan and you really know what you're doing, then no, I definitely wouldn't do that. I do want to ask you before we wrap things up, for your own influence and persuasion superpower, like what's your greatest skill or superpower in influence and persuasion?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've done a good job with over time is building relationships with people. And so whether people I'm meeting, virtually or people online, being really, really intentional about building relationships, building my network and like having a genuine interest in people. And so I think that that is something that has made a big difference for me and speaking certainly a part of that in terms of having conversations with people, of being interested in and asking good questions, asking follow-up questions, of circling back with them, of keeping in touch with them. And so building good relationships, building a strong network has certainly helped build my own influence and persuasion and personally and professionally.
Fantastic. Now, I will be including links to the Speaker Lab podcast and to your Successful Speaker book into the show notes for people as well. But I know you also have courses and programs that people can come and check out. So, what's the best way for people to find out more about those?
Yeah, if you want to schedule a call with our team and if everything that we've kind of been covering and talking about here today with Johnny, if any of that resonates with you and like, hey, I want to learn more about that. And maybe you know exactly who you want to speak to, or maybe you're like, it's still kind of fuzzy and I'm trying to figure that out. Or maybe you've done a few free gigs here and there, or maybe you've been paid once or twice and just going like, I'd love to do more of it. I'd love to get paid. I just don't know what to do next. And that's exactly where I was many years ago of going like, I have the potential, like I feel like I can do this. I just don't have the plan. So I had the potential, but I need the plan. And so if that resonates with you and kind of where you're at of like, I enjoy speaking, I love doing it, I want to do more of it. I don't know what to do from here. I just need someone to tell me or show me. Then we'd love to talk with you. Again, I'd go to thespeakerlab.com/apply. Thespeakerlab.com/apply. Schedule a free call with one of our team members, and be happy to chat with you, understand like what your goals are as a speaker and what you want to do, and how we can help you.
Fantastic. Well, that will be in the show notes for anyone who wants to go and check that out as well. Now, aside from your own book, which I do highly recommend, as I've listened to it multiple times on audiobook, what books would you recommend? Like books that maybe relate to speaking or influence or persuasion, or just books that have had a big impact on you? You give us one or two book recommendations that you think people should go and check these out.
Yeah, let me scan my bookshelves here. A book I read just recently is called The Road Less Stupid. The Road Less
Keith
Stupid
Cunningham,
by
right?
Keith Cunningham. Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
love it.
Short, bite-sized chapters. You can kind of bounce around, skip around, choose your own adventure sort of book. That was a really good book and that was well put together in terms of like each chapter ended up with a long list of questions for you to be thinking about and kind of
Yeah,
pondering and reflect on. And so I really like a practical book like that. Another good example is a book called by Jason Fried and David
yeah.
Hanson, something like that.
I
Whatever.
can't remember,
I
but
may
yeah,
be
it's a while
butchering
back
it.
since I read that. Yeah.
Yeah, the guys from Basecamp.
Yeah.
And so that's another like really, really practical one, kind of a similar format to The Road Less Stupid, where it's kind of some short bite-sized chapters, probably, I don't know, 40, 50 chapters and kind of their thoughts on various parts of business. And so, yeah, that's another good one that I definitely would recommend.
Thank you. Well, we're not going to take up any more of your time today. I really appreciate everything you've shared with us. I just wonder if there's one final thing that, if one thing above everything else that we talked about that you most hope people will take away and remember from this conversation, what do you hope that would be?
Yeah, I think just doing something with what we talked about here. So if you're listening going like I'm interested in speaking, and for a lot of people speaking is one of those things that has been on your radar for a while, and maybe you're like, I'll, kick the can down the road. Maybe at some point in the future I'll do that. Well, I mean, we just turned into another year. It's 2022. Like at some point you've got to take action on this. You don't want to look back and on a life of regret and be like, I think I could have been a speaker, but I'll never know because I didn't try. So if speaking is one of those things that's been on your radar, then don't hesitate to reach out. Let us know if there's anything we can do to help you, support you on that journey. We'd love to take that walk with you.
Grant Baldwin, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Speaking Influence. I have been so excited about it, and you've absolutely delivered everything I hoped for and more. Thank you so much for coming and being a guest today.
Johnny, thanks, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, please consider the cost of the show to be sharing it out with your friends and your network. I know that Grant is a great guest, and we have lots of other amazing guests lined up for this year. So I know you're going to love a lot of the shows that are coming up. Make sure you are subscribed so you get notified of those. Remember as well to go and check out our sponsors, BrandFace. If you have a marketing message that you want to make sure you have the right story that is connecting with the right audience in the right way, BrandFace can help you. Visit learnaboutbrandface.com to find out more. If you're on LinkedIn, please do come and follow me. I'll put a link into the show notes for you, and you can check out my weekly blog, which has more information, some updates around the show, and weekly articles. It's called Podfluencer Weekly. It's all about building your influence and persuasion through the world of podcasting. I hope that you'll come and join me there as well as on the show, and I look forward to seeing you again on another episode very soon for Speaking Influence. Till next time, go and make great things happen.